Everyone in that courtroom laughed at him. Until this happened. The man with dusty boots, no lawyer, and a wrinkled flannel shirt. But what they didn't know, he wasn't just the plaintiff. The sterile air of courtroom 3B hung heavy with the scent of old paper, polished wood, and latent judgment. Sunlight filtered through the tall, arched windows, painted stripes across the worn marble floor, momentarily illuminating dust motes dancing in a silent, cosmic ballet. It was a setting designed for solemnity, for truth to unfurl, yet today it felt more like a stage for a cruel farce. At the plaintiff's table, standing with the quiet dignity of an ancient oak, was Marcus Taylor. He was a man carved by hard living, his face a roadmap of sun-kissed lines and the occasional scar, his hands calloused from years of working the earth. His attire was a silent defiance to the formal setting, worn-out jeans, a faded plaid flannel shirt, and dusty, scuffed work boots that had seen more fields than courtrooms. In one hand, held not defensively, but with a profound, almost spiritual certainty, was a single sheet of paper. It wasn't just paper. It glowed, a soft, ethereal light emanating from its creases, bathing Marcus's calm, powerful face in a warm, golden hue. It was the deed to his land, his legacy, his very soul. Across the aisle, at the defense table, stood Bartholomew Bart Croft, Esquire. Bart was the antithesis of Marcus, slick, impeccably groomed, his blue suit crisp enough to cut glass, his silk tie a vibrant, defiant splash against his starched white shirt. His hair was meticulously parted, his smile a practiced, predatory flash. He was a shark in a tailored suit, and right now that shark was mid-scoff, a sneer twisting his lips as he regarded Marcus. His eyes, usually cold and calculating, were wide now, not with amusement, but with a dawning, incredulous disbelief. Above his shocked expression, a phantom red stamp shimmered in the air, mocking his arrogance. Billionaire? The judge's bench loomed behind them, a dark, imposing shadow, like an arbiter of fate shrouded in mystery. Only the heavy wooden gavel was visible, caught in a sliver of light, tilted precariously, as if it had just descended with a resounding final thud. And in the blurred background, a sea of faces, the courtroom audience, whispered, gasped, their collective surprise a palpable wave rippling through the hushed hall. The case of Croft and Associates versus Marcus Taylor had been a sensation, a David and Goliath story where Goliath seemed to have all the legal artillery, all the money, and all the connections. Bart Croft had been laughing for months, openly deriding Marcus as a backwoods pauper, a delusional farmer, attempting to lay claim to land that, by all appearances, had belonged to the powerful real estate conglomerate, TerraCorp, for decades. It began simply enough, as many complex injustices do. Marcus's family had owned the land for generations, a sprawling Courtroom, fertile tract just outside the burgeoning city. It wasn't grand, but it was theirs, farmed with love and sweat, a place where generations had been born, lived, and died. But the city was growing, stretching its hungry tendrils outwards, and suddenly, Marcus's unassuming parcel of land became prime real estate. TerraCorp, a titan in urban development, saw its potential, a massive commercial complex, luxury condos, a new bypass. They wanted it, and they were used to getting what they wanted. Their initial offer to Marcus was insulting, a fraction of its true value. Marcus, a man of simple needs but unwavering principles, refused. He knew his land. He knew its worth not just in dollars, but in history and belonging. He wouldn't sell. That's when the legal maneuvers began. TerraCorp, through their formidable legal team led by Bart Croft, claimed a prescriptive easement, then adverse possession, then a complex tangle of historical documents, alleging a forgotten sale from a distant ancestor. They produced reams of meticulously crafted, legalese-laden documents, filled with obscure clauses and ancient land deeds, all designed to bury Marcus in paperwork he couldn't understand, let alone fight. Marcus, meanwhile, had little more than his conviction and a small, frayed box of family papers, passed down from his great-grandmother. He tried to find a lawyer, but the big firms scoffed at his lack of funds, and the small ones were intimidated by TerraCorp's reputation. He was alone, until he met Clara. Clara Dubois was an unlikely champion, a retired law professor, sharp as a tack, but with a kind smile. She'd heard about Marcus's plight through a local community group. She saw not just a legal battle, but a fundamental injustice. She offered to help pro bono. Clara was a whirlwind of meticulous research and quiet determination. She spent weeks poring over Marcus's old documents, cross-referencing them with dusty county records, poring over microfiche in the backrooms of archives. She found discrepancies, small, almost invisible flaws in TerraCorp's meticulously constructed narrative. But the biggest challenge wasn't just finding the truth. It was proving it in a courtroom designed for corporate might, not historical integrity. The trial had been a grinding, tedious affair. Bart Croft had reveled in it, each day a fresh opportunity to belittle Marcus, to paint him as an ignorant bumpkin clinging to a fantasy. He'd brought in expert witnesses, surveyors, historians, all testifying to TerraCorp's unassailable claim. He'd laughed when Marcus, earnest and heartfelt, spoke of his family's connection to the land, dismissing it as emotional rhetoric irrelevant to the law. Mr. Taylor, Bart had sneered just yesterday, his voice dripping with condescension. Are you truly suggesting that these family heirlooms, he gestured dismissively at Marcus's box of papers, hold more legal weight than a thoroughly researched, expertly vetted chain of title stretching back over a century? Marcus had simply looked at him, his gaze steady, unwavering. They hold the truth, he'd said, his voice quiet but resonant. Which is more than I can say for your fancy documents, Mr. Croft. The courtroom had snickered. Bart Croft had smirked, leaning into the microphone. Truth, Mr. Taylor, is defined by the law, not by sentimental attachments. And by the law, this land belongs to TerraCorp. Today was closing arguments. Bart Croft had delivered a masterful performance, a symphony of legal jargon and persuasive rhetoric, tearing Marcus's meager evidence to shreds. He'd ended with a flourish, his chest puffed out, proclaiming TerraCorp's absolute victory. The jury, a group of tired-looking citizens, seemed to nod in weary agreement. It felt inevitable. Then it was Marcus's turn. Clara had wanted to deliver the closing, but Marcus had insisted. This is my story, he'd told her. I need to tell it. He walked to the plaintiff's table, the worn fabric of his flannel rustling softly. He didn't grandstand. He didn't use legal terms. He just spoke, simply and powerfully, of the land, of his great-grandmother, Sarah, a freed slave who, against all odds, had purchased the parcel in the post-Civil War chaos, her name etched onto a crude deed. He spoke of the struggles, the lean years, the joyous harvests, the children born on that very soil. They say I don't own this land. Marcus's voice cut through the air, low and steady, because their papers say something different. But my family has been on that land, working it, living it, burying our kin in it, for over 150 years. What kind of law ignores that? Bart Croft scoffed, loudly enough for the jury to hear. He exchanged a knowing glance with his junior associate, a young woman who offered a nervous, hesitant smile. The courtroom still held its breath, but a few murmurs of polite disapproval rose from the gallery. Your Honor, Marcus continued, his gaze shifting from the jury to the shadowed judge. Mr. Croft and TerraCorp presented their evidence. Now I present mine. He held up the glowing paper. It wasn't a trick of the light. The deed truly shimmered, a soft, warm luminescence emanating from its aged parchment. It wasn't the original deed. Everyone knew that. The original had been lost in a house fire decades ago, a tragedy that had almost broken his grandmother. This was a certified copy, one Marcus had found deep within the box of his great-grandmother's effects, a forgotten treasure. Bart Croft chuckled. Your Honor, the plaintiff is presenting the same unremarkable copy of a supposed deed that has been thoroughly debunked. It's a photocopy, not the original, and its provenance is questionable at best. Objection, Your Honor. Clara's voice, sharp and clear, cut through the courtroom. Mr. Croft is making unsubstantiated claims about evidence. The court has already accepted this document for consideration. The judge, a stern woman with tired eyes, gave Bart a pointed look. Sustained, Mr. Croft. Confine your remarks to arguments. not characterizations of evidence already admitted. Bart gave a curt nod, but his smirk remained. He'd won. He knew it. This glowing paper was just Marcus's last desperate plea, a visual gimmick. This deed, Marcus said, ignoring Bart's sneer, is a copy of the deed purchased by my great-grandmother, Sarah Taylor, in 1867, and it was filed, as required by law, in the county records. Which records, Mr. Taylor? Bart interjected, unable to resist. Because we've checked every extant record. There's no such filing. That's because you were looking in the wrong place, Marcus said, his voice gaining a quiet power that commanded attention. He looked directly at Bart, his gaze piercing. You were looking for a deed filed by a woman. My great-grandmother, God rest her soul, was a wise woman. She knew the world she lived in. She knew that a black woman barely out of slavery trying to buy land would face obstacles. A ripple went through the audience. Even the jury leaned forward. So, Marcus continued, his voice softer now, almost a whisper. She filed it under the name of the only person she knew would be truly respected and unchallenged in the eyes of the law, a person who had fought for this nation, and who was beyond reproach. He paused, and the golden light on the deed seemed to brighten. She filed it, Marcus stated, his voice ringing through the silent courtroom, under the name of Private Robert E. Lee Taylor. A collective gasp swept through the courtroom, not just a ripple, but a sudden, sharp intake of breath. Bart Croft, mid-scoff, froze. His eyes, which had been narrowed in contempt, snapped wide, their disbelief now unvarnished. The red stamp, unseen by anyone but the fates, hovered above his head. Billionaire? Robert E. Lee Taylor. The name echoed in the stillness. Everyone in that courtroom, everyone in that city, knew the name. Private Robert E. Lee Taylor was a local legend, a Civil War hero, a white man who had fought for the Union, returned a decorated veteran, and become a revered figure in the county's early history. He was known for his integrity, his fairness, his unwavering commitment to justice. He had even been instrumental in establishing the first schools for formerly enslaved people in the county. Bart Croft's smug facade crumbled, replaced by naked shock. His jaw hung slightly open. He knew the implications of that name. Clara, beside Marcus, allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible smile. This was her ace, the needle in the haystack, the detail she'd unearthed after countless hours. Sarah Taylor, Marcus's great-grandmother, had worked for Private Robert A. Lee Taylor as a young girl, earning her freedom and later his respect and trust. He had served as a witness to her land purchase, but more profoundly, he had allowed her to file the deed under a variant of his own unimpeachable name, a safeguard against the racism and prejudice that would have otherwise invalidated her claim. The full name on the deed, only discoverable by meticulously cross-referencing obscure county ledgers from that specific year, was Sarah Lee Taylor, with a footnote in a tiny, faded script confirming Robert E. Lee Taylor, witness and guarantor. It was a legal bypass, a quiet act of defiance against a discriminatory system, one that had been utterly missed by TerraCorp's high-priced legal team, who had searched only for Sarah Taylor's name, not accounting for a subtle, brilliant act of subterfuge. The gavel on the judge's bench seemed to shimmer in the low light, tilted as if frozen mid-descent, not slammed down in judgment, but held aloft in stunned suspension. Marcus held the deed, its golden glow now seeming to pulse with the weight of history, of resilience, of a truth finally revealed. The audience, a blurred background of whispering figures, was no longer merely reacting in surprise. They were alive with it, a collective gasp turning into excited murmurs, then hushed exclamations. Reporters in the back scribbled furiously. Bart Croft recovered, but barely. Your Honor, this is an outrage, a forgery, a fabricated claim. Mr. Croft, the judge's voice cut through his sputtering, cool and precise. Her face was still mostly in shadow, but the sliver of light on the gavel seemed to strengthen. Are you suggesting that a document bearing the confirmed name of a revered county figure, duly filed in the county records, however obscurely, is a fabrication? Bart stammered. But our research. Our title searches? Perhaps your research was incomplete, Mr. Croft, the judge stated, her voice holding an edge that was new. She looked at Marcus, then at the glowing deed. The quiet power radiating from Marcus. The sheer historical weight of the revelation was undeniable. The authenticity of the deed and its filing under the specified name, the judge continued, her voice gaining authority, has been meticulously verified by the court's independent historical research team at the plaintiff's prior request and under seal. The document is, indeed, legitimate. A stunned silence descended. Then a fresh wave of gasps, louder this time, rippled through the courtroom. Bart Croft's face went from disbelief to a sickening shade of white. The phantom billionaire? Stamp above his head seemed to mock him with renewed intensity. Marcus stood tall, his calm expression unwavering. The golden light on the deed seemed to reflect not just its truth, but the quiet triumph of generations. He had not just presented a document. He had presented a legacy, a testament to the ingenuity and perseverance of his ancestors. He had unveiled a truth that had been buried under layers of prejudice, corporate greed, and sloppy legal work. The jury members who had looked so weary moments before now sat upright, their expressions a mix of awe and dawning realization. The narrative had shifted dramatically, irreversibly. The smug lawyer, the powerful corporation, the inevitable defeat, it all vanished in the golden glow of a forgotten deed and a brave woman's foresight. The judge cleared her throat, a small, significant sound in the hushed room. She picked up the gavel. This time it wasn't to be slammed in defeat, but to signify a victory hard won, a truth finally acknowledged. Bart Croft stood there, a defeated shark, his perfect suit suddenly looking crumpled, his carefully constructed arrogance in tatters. The truth, in this moment, was not defined by his legal prowess, but by the quiet power of a glowing piece of paper, held by a man who looked like he'd just stepped out of the very land they were fighting over. The whispers in the audience grew louder, evolving into a quiet hum of wonder. This wasn't just a legal case anymore. It was a moment of history, a testament to the enduring power of family, heritage, and the unexpected ways in which truth can emerge, even in the most unlikely of places. Marcus looked at the deed, then lifted his eyes to the courtroom ceiling, as if to the ancestors who had watched over him. The golden light illuminated his face, not just with power, but with a profound peace. He had done it. He had reclaimed his family's truth. The judge's hand tightened on the gavel, poised to strike. The battle was over. The land was his, and the world had just learned that sometimes the quietest truths glow the brightest. The aftermath was a blur. The courtroom erupted the moment the judge declared the verdict in favor of Marcus Taylor. The words, "property restored to the rightful owner," echoed, ringing with a profound sense of justice. Reporters swarmed Marcus, their microphones thrust forward, their cameras flashing. Bart Croft, looking utterly devastated, was quickly ushered away by his equally shell-shocked colleagues, avoiding eye contact with anyone. The billionaire? Stamp, though unseen, felt like it had been indelibly seared onto his reputation. Marcus, however, remained calm amidst the chaos. He hugged Clara tightly, a silent acknowledgment of her unwavering dedication. "We did it, Clara," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Clara simply smiled, her eyes twinkling. "No, Marcus, you did it. I just helped you find your truth." News of the case spread like wildfire. "The farmer who beat the billionaires," read one headline. "Ancestral deed lights up courtroom," declared another. Marcus Taylor became an unlikely hero, a symbol of resilience against corporate greed. People from all over the country reached out, sharing their own stories of land disputes, inspired by his fight. TerraCorp, reeling from the public relations nightmare and the unexpected legal defeat, tried to appeal, but the evidence, particularly the meticulously verified historical deed, was ironclad. They eventually dropped the case, opting to cut their losses rather than face further public scrutiny. Marcus's land, the precious parcel that had been the subject of such bitter dispute, was finally unequivocally his. He walked its fields, breathing in the scent of rich earth, feeling the soft breeze on his skin. The glow from the deed had faded, but its truth remained solid and unwavering. He wasn't a billionaire, not in the traditional sense, but he was wealthy beyond measure in heritage, in peace, and in the quiet satisfaction of a battle fought and won. He decided to continue farming, but with a renewed sense of purpose. He began exploring sustainable agriculture practices, wanting to ensure the land would thrive for generations to come, just as it had for his ancestors. He opened a small section of his farm for community events, teaching children about the importance of land stewardship and the stories it held. Bart Croft's career, meanwhile, suffered a significant blow. The Billionaire stamp, though fictional, became a pervasive meme, a symbol of his hubris. He was eventually demoted, his once stellar reputation tarnished by the unprecedented loss to a man he had so casually underestimated. The courtroom, once a place of tension and injustice for Marcus, became a monument to a pivotal moment. The judge, whose initial skepticism had given way to respect, often cited the Taylor case in legal seminars as a reminder of the power of unexpected evidence and the enduring spirit of justice. The gavel, now a symbol of decisive truth, remained on her bench, ready to deliver judgments with newfound solemnity. Years passed. Marcus, though older, retained the same rugged dignity. His farm prospered, a vibrant green testament to his victory. The story of the glowing deed, of Sarah Taylor's foresight, and of Marcus's unwavering resolve became a local legend passed down through families, a powerful reminder that sometimes the simplest truths, held with the strongest conviction, can overcome even the most formidable odds. The memory of that dramatic courtroom scene, forever etched in the minds of those who witnessed it, served as a potent lesson that laughter in the face of truth can quickly turn to shocked disbelief, and that justice, though sometimes delayed, will always find a way to shine. If you're loving stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel right now. Hit that bell icon so you never miss the next jaw-dropping twist.